Welcome to the 136th episode of the Flipped Learning Remixed podcast, the podcast that mixes cutting-edge technology with learning. I'm your host, Troy Cockrum, and I'm joined by my co-host, Joan Brown.
Hi, Troy.
Joan.
Hi.
So it's an exciting week this week, isn't it, Joan?
Oh, in many ways, yes. I mean, it's going to be 75 degrees tomorrow. That's exciting.
Well, yeah, it was 75 degrees here today. So a kid came in from recess, like a second grader or something, and he goes, "It's burning hot out there. It's like 75 degrees." I said, "How does life exist on Earth when it's burning hot at 75 degrees?" But, yeah.
You're making him so inquisitive. All right.
The other thing is, and the reason we're doing this podcast is it's Open Education Week.
That's right. But mostly, Open Education Week is geared towards the university crowd. But I think we'll talk tonight about how it really does apply to K through 12, right?
Right, because just last week, or was it 2 weeks ago, the Department of Education announced their Go Open initiative. So if you go on Twitter and you search hashtag Go Open, you'll see some posts about it. And they had an event out in California recently, and they are asking people to take a Go Open pledge to try to bring these open educational resources, or OERs, to K-12.
Which they need to be.
They do need to be. So what is your understanding of what an OER is?
Well, I got to back it up because being a computer history teacher, we all know that Bill Gates really started this whole dilemma between, do we pay for something that is digital or do we not? And of course, back in the day when IBM was just starting to make computers, their theory was, yes, we pay for hardware, but we should not pay for any software or digital content. And Bill Gates, of course, came in and stated the opposite. Absolutely not. We ought to be paying for software. So it's split philosophically into two groups. And those two groups have been there ever since. So now you've got an open source movement, a lot of programmers out there believing that code ought to be free. You've got Google out there digitizing every form of book known. And you do have the opposite end of the spectrum as well, those that are trying to really hold on to intellectual property and make sure it's paid for, particularly the textbook companies. And they're very much involved in this process of making sure that textbooks stay alive and well in the K through 12 world. So with that said, when I look at open educational resources, I see it right now as trying to provide textbook content free to the education world. But I don't think that's where it's going to stay.
Right. I feel like open education resources have what's considered an open license. It's content produced for educational purposes, and it has an open license, so you can reuse it for free. But that's even muddied some because some companies are trying to make money off of those kind of resources, or and we'll talk a little bit later about MOOCs, but MOOC has open in the title, and yet there are some companies who charge for MOOCs.
Yes.
And so it just in the fact that they charge technically doesn't make it open. But Creative Commons, the Creative Commons license, which we've talked about before in here, and we can talk a little bit more about, is a form of open educational resources, but there's been a huge movement, particularly at the university level, to provide provide content with an open license so anybody can access that information, read it, interact with it, remix it, reproduce it, whatever they want to do with it. And it's the altruistic mission originally, and still is, I would say, is to then provide these resources for people who can't afford to buy the textbook or go to a college, or for whatever reason they can't get to a college. And unfortunately, the research shows that most people who interact with open educational resources are college-educated people who don't need it. I mean, I don't want to say don't need it, but even though it is getting to the underserved populations, it's not getting there as quickly as people would like.
Right. So if you're a basic teacher in the classroom and you're trying to understand all this, it can be confusing because your school system may be providing you textbooks and telling you, there are some copyright violations if you photocopy stuff. And then at the same time, you can go online and find very similar content on websites. So you're trying to balance this understanding. And I think Creative Commons is where it comes in. Is the point you were making is that you can actually remix it. You can reuse it and change it, at least with many of those licenses. And so that gives the educator that freedom to create their own lessons. And that's what we're looking, when we talk about OER, we're talking about open education where you can create your own lessons from it, not having to use exactly what's printed the way it is. So we might want to start talking about what is out there available and what you might find if you went looking for open educational resources.
Can I say too one thing that unfortunately a lot of research on open educational resources has looked at it from a cost saving rather than is it a better educational model? And there is some research about how are these resources being used and are they better educational? But a lot of people, a lot of schools particularly, are looking at them as how can we use these to save money and not is this what's best for our students?
Speaking of which, there is a website called openedgroup.org, and it has a calculator on it showing you based on how many students are in your school district and how much your textbook might cost, etc. And they show you how much you can save. So speaking of cost emphasis, that's where it is. And of course, I know a lot of schools are using that term paperless. And they're thinking, oh, well, if everything was digitized, it would save us so much money. Yes and no. You have to have devices to view it on. So, so I think the most easily Googled and found open educational resource is C12.
The CK12, yeah.
CK12. And I think, Troy, you said you've used it maybe more than
I used it early on. I haven't, since I've been out, since I don't have my own classroom for the last 2 years now, I haven't used it. But I used it when they first came out in my own classroom to just kind of see what kind of content because I never used the textbook in my class, but there were times when I felt like some structure was needed from a textbook kind of a standpoint. And so I liked that they had open resources to bring out.
And they've got it set up so, yes, there are some just basic textbooks, but they've got some interactives as well. I mean, I'm in here looking at one where I'm having to figure out millimeters to centimeters, and I get a scratch pad, very much like Khan Academy. And I know we aren't even talking about Khan Academy, which could also be considered open educational, but CK12 seems to be the one that's growing the most and getting the most use. You create your account, right? And you can also make your own textbook there, which I was playing around with that option, and I found it a little bit cumbersome. They have a lot of features in there where you've got to make sure you cite all of your sources that you put in, and so it's supposed to be an official kind of textbook.
One
But
of the things
the
that I
interface,
liked was I could put my flip videos in with the content.
right?
So I could kind of structure the textbook around the content that I had already created.
Mm-hmm. So I guess if you were grouping together some of these practice items and your very own textbook and then some of their textbooks, you'd have a fairly meaty classroom resources that you could use daily. Do you remember, can you load students into this so that you could track any of their
The way,
progress?
if I remember, and I hate to say
Okay.
without for sure, but if I remember, they all created an account, and then you put them in your class, and then assigned them the resource, and so then they could access it after you assigned it to them.
Okay. It appears that's, I was playing with it, but like you and I both are in that boat where if we don't have an actual class ready to go, that's hard to judge it. Yes, it does actually have a nice dashboard where you can monitor the activity of your classes. So that's good. I think if you've never looked at it and you are looking for content, it's a great place for you to start.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And now I see that it's got real nice mobile capability for tablets and phones. So you're able to just look at your class progress right there on your phone while they're doing things very similar to Khan Academy kind of style. I was going to mention too, if you're looking for a little more content that's considered open, Learn Zillion is primary grades. I mean, it's K through 8, but I'm looking mostly at math and English that is K through 6. And they have a lot of nice resources there as well. Again, it's a login, but I think they've got a lot of really nice English lessons for our language arts teachers. And it's video based, much of it.
And I want to add, because you Learn Zillion, there's a lot of good sites that kind of bring that information together. And Edpuzzle, I like. Edpuzzle technically wouldn't be an open educational resource, but you do searches for videos, and it searches all those sites. It searches Khan Academy, it searches YouTube, it searches Learn Zillion, and it searches all those sites and calls them together for you. So that's one way, because you can any teacher knows you can waste a lot of time searching for content you need that fits your needs, and sometimes it's easier just to say, forget it, I'm going to just do it myself, because I could have saved myself a couple hours, so
True.
Edpuzzle, when I need a video quick on a specific topic, it finds them, and it also shows ones that other teachers have used. So it kind of, in essence, it's almost a popularity rating. And I say, oh, there's other teachers using this one. It might be a good one, and I can sort of narrow down my choices that way as well.
So I don't know, have you ever been in a textbook adoption year at a school?
Yeah.
And you've gone through the process of all of these marketers coming in and showing you all the razzmatazz of their textbook, and you've been given umpteen copies of different textbooks, and you're trying to weigh out, which one's better. And honestly, you find yourself doing the exact same thing, right? You eventually adopt a textbook and you realize that 80% of it nobody uses, right?
Yeah.
So I would suggest that some of these open resources are probably a good thing to look at side by side with a textbook and look at how many people are actually using them. So I'm in one place that is truly textbooks that are online, that are open, and this is OER Commons, and they have ratings. And that way you actually can tell whether or not people are using this book and they actually like it. But it's done very nicely because, for example, I'm looking at one here on American government, and it is a full textbook, just like you would see at a middle or high school. And it's got the lessons set up with it. You can search and find what you need. Absolutely would be just as good as having an online textbook that you would purchase. So I give some of those things a thought if you're in a textbook adoption year and say, hey, maybe we should compare what's already out there before if you have that ability to do so.
And what I like about these two, so this like OER Commons and CK12, is you pick and choose. You're not taking a whole textbook. You're saying, I like this lesson on poetry from this source. So that's the poetry section of my textbook. But I like this unit or resource on expository writing from this source. And so you're in essence piecing together your own textbook instead of just taking it's not, you don't have to take the whole, content from one source. You can piece it together and make your own that way.
Right. And that's where you've got a learning management system that kind of builds it all together. So you're pulling from one place, pulling from another. How about some free learning management systems, such as Edmodo or even Google Classroom, where you can, have that portal for the students.
Right.
Yeah.
There's Moodle as well, and it's it's the Moodle's problem was always their interface. Now it's free, and there's nobody really building it. I believe in a few years, particularly at the university level, hopefully it'll trickle down to the K-12 level sooner than that, but they'll hire someone to take open source LMSs and then build it, customize it to your needs. So you might take a Moodle, but then make it look slicker and add in a couple more tools. And so somebody's job will be, rather than having, these LMS salespeople coming and changing your LMS every 2 or 3 years because somebody's giving you a better deal or whatever. You'll have somebody on staff that's their job is to create a custom LMS that works for what you need it to do.
And as I understand, Moodle is open source. So if you were a coder, you would be able to tweak it in any way you wanted. That's my understanding. It'd be great. I think larger districts should have someone who can do that without too much difficulty.
Yeah. So, and I think that's coming. I think as people realize that, I don't know how many different LMSs I've tried, and it seems like about every 2 years I talk to several schools that, okay, now we're on this LMS, and they all kind of joke that we're no longer using this system, now we're using this system. And
I agree. And or they get stuck into a contract for 5 years and they feel that they're being left behind because their learning management system is too confined. So I agree. You're stuck in that world. That's why sometimes it's better for the teachers to just build their own, whether it be just a website of some kind that they can use, because it's really just a portal. In the end, a learning management system, unless it is connected to your grade book. And if that is the case, then you've got to use it. But for the most part, if people are using like Google Classroom and they're grading there, Google Classroom isn't connecting to anybody's grade book right now. So, you can just download the spreadsheets if you want. make your own. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of OERs out there, and hopefully they're making their way more down to K-12.
Some. So we
Somewhat.
were going to talk a little bit, and I'm going to bring up a site called WiserMe, WIZER.me. And this is sort of like an offshoot here, and I know you're going to get into another topic as well, but this is all about worksheets and creating and sharing out for free digital worksheets. This is a brand new site, so it doesn't have a lot yet there, but people can create their own, including students. This is yet another piece of that idea of open resources, because it's more than just digital text and images now. We've got to be able to incorporate, as you were saying, like Edpuzzle, you've got to be able to incorporate the video, but you've also got to have the interactivity. And some of these companies are making some good interactivity, but you can't tweak it. At WiserMe, you can tweak it and you can make your own interactivity. And I think there's a lot of teachers who are excited about that and would like to be able to make their own. These are still a little bit simplistic, but there's some potential there. And there is a way to assess the learning, whether it be, drag and drop, or they've been filling in blanks, or moving to make different text or block kind of objects. It does have a way to assess that digitally, so that helps. But I'd let people take a look at this and see what they think about some of these worksheets that are out there, including anyone who's flipping, because you can embed videos right in the activities.
Yeah, and actually, I know that's the title of the podcast, is Flipped Learning Remixed. Flipping is really set up well for OERs. And bringing all your own content, or bringing other people's content in, and mixing it and remixing it, and having students interact with it and remixing it themselves, really fits well into a flipped classroom.
Right. So, and you were going to mention a flipped class.
Oh, yes. Because another open education resource that has been gaining in popularity over the last few years, or has been getting a lot of press, is the MOOC, the Massive Online Open Courses. And some people call them Massive Online Open Content, because of some of the one of the criticisms is that a lot of people don't complete MOOCs. And we can talk a little bit about that.
And that'd be me. I'm one of them. I'm really bad about starting stuff and not finishing.
Yeah. But a fan of the show, Ken Bauer, he's got an open, what he calls open flip, as a MOOC on flipping. And he just started his most recent round in January. But he does, I think this is his 5th iteration or 6th maybe iteration of the course, and you can find it at kencourses.com/openflip. That's KENSCORSES, kenscourses.com/openflip, and find out how to join his classes or see some of his content. But flipping aside, I mean, it's a great resource for learning about the pillars of flipped learning, and finding more resources. But it's also a well-designed MOOC, and so that's why I wanted to promote that, because if you wanted to see a well-designed MOOC, that is one example. Because I'm like you. I took a MOOC through PBLU one time, and I got frustrated with the instructor because she couldn't keep up with the amount of people that were in the MOOC. And so I did go through a lot of the modules, but I didn't complete the course. I got what I wanted out of it. I learned quite a bit about project-based learning, but I didn't complete the course and get the certificate. But I wanted to mention one resource, I think, besides Ken's Open Flip is edx.org. It's edx.org. And it was started by Harvard and MIT, because I think it was 2009, I want to say. The president of Harvard said by 2017, I think, he wanted every course that Harvard offered to be available online for free. And they have gotten quite a bit of those courses done, and they offered incentives for professors to put their courses online and things like that. But now it has Harvard, MIT, Berkeley, University of Texas, Arizona State, Georgetown, Boston University, Dartmouth, Cornell, Georgia Tech, Princeton, University of Chicago, Penn, University of Tokyo, Notre Dame, University of Washington, tons of universities, University of Michigan, have collaborated to put courses online, full college courses online for free. And they have the course setup, the LMS, I guess, in essence, is open source. So if you wanted to create your own open course or MOOC, you could use their open source platform to do that as well. And I like it. Just, you can see what classes are out there. If I were designing, say I got a job designing an online course to start in the fall, first thing I would do is go to one of these schools and see what classes they have similar, and then you can pull all the content down and see all the assignments. And I think that's one benefit of MOOCs is they take open education resources and package them into a course. And then you can take what you want from that course, but it takes the searching and it kind of organizes the process for you. It also, I think, puts more quality content out there. Because people are putting their course materials, the quality of the content is better than if somebody's just putting stuff out there.
Right, and that's sort of where we need to bring it into K-12, because I think that's the talent of a teacher, is to be that curator and the shape of the content. So when you do that, you are really creating, from open source, you're creating a unique course, and you package it in your way. And now what we need to provide K through 12 is a way to create it online in a packaged way that they could create a MOOC and actually have other students in there other than just their classroom. And I know I could see teachers right now that I know saying, "You've got to be kidding me. I already have enough kids to teach." But it's really not that. It's all about the ability to collaborate and the ideas that are shared in a MOOC, more so than I have to grade it or I have to read it. I think that would be the piece of it that we could figure out. But the advantages of that collaboration, there's a lot there.
Right. Right. And another thing I like for MOOCs, we were talking about this off air, and I think the potential that they could redesign or redefine the college admission process.
Sure.
And for Harvard has one of their master's degrees. It's in like business inventory management or something like that, where the very first year is all MOOCs, and you don't enroll in the actual. You don't have to attend the actual school and enroll and pay money until you've completed that first year and you start the second year. And so, if you don't complete that first year, if you don't pass those MOOCs, you just don't go into the second year. And so it's a way for them to vet and kind of go through the application process without people having to take GREs and all this and that. And I feel like that's going to trickle down into high school students are going to start taking MOOCs in order to get into specific colleges rather than the standardized test movement we have now.
So if I was just, a teacher, and this is the first time I've heard of this, what would be, maybe we should start with Twitter hashtags. Which ones should we follow? There's Open Ed.
Yeah, or Go Open. Go Open. That's the newer one that the DOE has started, and I think that's going to start to populate here over the next few months more. So,
right. And of course, right now is Open Education Week, which is Open Education WK. So if you were looking for something going on right now, I grant you, it's still very much university based, but like we've been talking, it's coming. It is coming faster. I'm already seeing on Open Education WK, I'm seeing some grammar flip videos. And that way, at least if you were following some of those Twitter hashtags, you might see some things that pop out at you for K through 12. And I would be also looking at some Creative Commons as well, yeah, just to see what's out there. And of course, all the resources that we've mentioned tonight. Oh yes, and there is hashtag OER, by the way.
Okay. I think, I would encourage teachers to start creating their own content, and it's tempting to go to teachers pay teachers, but there's a big movement against that now because a lot of the things on teachers pay teachers are not original content. They just pulled it off the internet and packaged it into their own little unit. And
well, I just shared something from Teachers Pay Teachers tonight when I did a search for their free material, because they do have it.
Right. Well, and when you join, if you want to list things for pay, you have to put at least one free item up there. Mm-hmm. So, and I'll admit I use Teachers Pay Teachers not recently, but there were times when I would use it in my classroom when I needed a resource, and I didn't mind paying $2 or $3 for it. Right. But I think more teachers need to be willing to share. More teachers need to be more open or transparent with their content, because that's education should be an open resource.
Oh, most definitely. And it's been kind of the Google theme, is that everyone should have access to all the world's knowledge. Yeah. And I think maybe because we're Google certified innovators, we believe that. I do, on the other hand, understand people's intellectual property and wanting to gain from that process. So if you're out there and you're writing and you're going to deliver some content, you can try to publish online as well, and make money at it. I was just going to add one more thing since we're mentioning that, and I saw it. You can publish on Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
they've actually created an open education resource area, and I'm drawing a blank on what it's called now. Aspire, maybe?
Aspire, Inspire. Not sure which.
Aspire, I think. But
Aspire.
so
Okay.
they made that announcement like maybe about a month ago, but it wasn't really public, and I don't know if was ready for prime time. But it was kind of, you could call open education resources and then have them printed, custom printed in your own package, in essence.
That's right. And the printing is very inexpensive through Amazon, from what I'm seeing, price-wise. And then the other little announcement that was made pretty much in the last week was that from a Google Doc, you can save now as an EPUB. So you can publish digital content that can be viewed on any device.
I saw that. That's good.
And that way maybe we'll get some more teachers writing their own textbooks. And
right. You know, I'll recommend a couple of books out there, but there's one called The World is Open, and it's by Kurt Bonk, B-O-N-K. And coincidentally, he is a professor in my doctoral program, so I know him well and his work well. He also wrote a book called Getting Tech Variety, TEC Variety, I think is what it was called, something like that. And then he just published, I think it's called MOOCs in Open Online Education. I'm trying to see, I have it on my bookshelf, but I can't read the title from here. But his Tech Variety book, he did self-publishing, but he puts it online for free. You can buy the book from Amazon, or you can just go to his website and download it for free. And it's activities for teaching online. That's what it is. But he said he gets, by giving his content away for free, he sells more copies of it than if he had just listed it for sale. So if people are concerned that, hey, I'm giving my stuff away and I'm not going to make any money, from my experiences, that's not true. If you give stuff away and it's good stuff, you'll get paid back for it in some way.
Yeah, I think even the music industry is finding that out.
Yep.
All right.
So that was enjoy Open Education Week, and I think you'll start seeing this movement over the next few years. More people take online classes, and more people are in blended classrooms and flipped classrooms, and there's just going to be a lot more need and uses for open resources and people producing open resources.
That's right. We got to push for that content creation too.
So, Joan, it was good to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you, Troy.
And for our listeners, we will be back again in just a few weeks. Thanks for listening.
All right. Good night.